Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel chapter 15, where we read of Saul being rejected. 1 Samuel 15:1. Then Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he set himself against him on the way while he was coming up from Egypt." This had taken place hundreds of years earlier. When the Israelites first came out of Egypt in the Exodus, the Amalekites had been waiting in the wilderness, and they had seen Israel as easy pickings, and anytime one of the Israelites would maybe lag behind or get too far ahead or go off to the side, the Amalekites would pick them up, pick them off, and destroy them. And now it's time for judgment to take place. God has waited. He has waited patiently for hundreds of years, and now the judgment is going to take place. And so Saul is told, "Now go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that he has, and do not spare him, but put to death both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. The entire nation and all it possesses is to be destroyed." Verse 4, then Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. Notice that Judah is being separated out, singled out from the rest of Israel. This is a shadow, sort of a hint of things to come in the future. Verse 5, Saul came to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the valley. Saul said to the Kenites, go down from among the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from Egypt. The Kenites, in fact, remember that there had been some that had befriended Moses. His father-in-law had been a Kenite of Midian. And so they are allowed to separate themselves, latter part of verse 6. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites. They won't be part of this judgment. They will be separated, so that the Amalekites alone will be judged. Verse 7, so Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as you go to Shur. These are all areas south of Canaan in the north part of the Sinai wilderness, which is east of Egypt. He captured Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. And so far, everything looks good. However, verse 9, but Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good, and were not willing to destroy them utterly, but everything despised and worthless that they utterly destroyed. God had said, I want it all. It's all going to be dedicated to me. It will all be dedicated to destruction. They do not obey. Verse 10, then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not carried out my commands. It was not a complete obedience. And Samuel was distressed and cried out to the Lord all night. After all, Samuel had been the one whom God had used to anoint Saul. You could say that Saul was Samuel's man. He looked at him as though he were his own disciple. And he is not happy to hear about this failure. Verse 12, Samuel rose early in the morning to meet Saul, and it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself, then turned and proceeded down to Gilgal. Now, our problem here, we sort of know about where Gilgal is. There are two different Carmels. There's one in the north, Mount Carmel. That probably is not in view here. Instead, this seems to be a southern area where he stops at Carmel, and then he's on his way up to Gilgal. Gilgal, the place where the covenant had been renewed once they'd come into the land. This is going to be the scene of their confrontation. Verse 13, Samuel said to Saul, Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed are you of the Lord, I have carried out the command of the Lord. And Samuel says, what? And not so fast. What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? I shouldn't be hearing anything. I should be hearing, excuse the pun, dead silence. I'm not hearing that at all. Verse 15, Saul said, they, and notice the use of the pronouns here, they have brought them from the Amalekites. Who's they? He's speaking of the Israelites, sort of throwing them under the bus. They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and oxen to sacrifice it to the Lord your God. Notice again the pronouns here. He's taking no responsibility for anything. But the rest we have utterly destroyed. The part that he says, the part that we got right, he'll say we have done this, but he's blaming it on everyone else. Verse 16, then Samuel said to Saul, wait and let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. And he said to him, speak. Verse 17, Samuel said, is it not true, though you were little in your own eyes, you were made the head of the tribes of Israel? You know, you hadn't gone out, you didn't make yourself king on your own strength, your own ambition. You weren't even interested in this. You were looking for some lost donkeys. God chose you. And notice, the Lord anointed you as king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners and the Amalekites and fight against them until they are exterminated. You had your marching orders. Verse 19, why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord, but rushed upon the spoil and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord? Why did you do wrong? Verse 20, then Saul said to Samuel, I did obey the voice of the Lord and went on the mission which the Lord sent me, and have brought back Agag, the king of Amalek. Remember, he wasn't told to bring him back, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. Verse 21, but the people took some of the spoil, sheep, oxen, the choicest of the things devoted to destruction. They did it, and they did it to sacrifice to the Lord your God at Gilgal. Yes, they didn't obey, but they got the stuff for God. They got it for him. Don't they at least deserve some points, some, I guess we could call it brownie points from God? Verse 22, Samuel said, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? This is going to be a common theme among the prophets. Don't think you can do wrong and just go and do some sort of religious ceremony and it will be okay. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. God says, I want obedience, because obedience comes from the heart. Verse 23, for rebellion is as the sin of divination. Now, divination was something that was wrong. Divination was trying to approach other gods through spiritists and witchcraft and things like that. And it's a hint, it's a foreshadowing of what's going to happen in Saul's case. He will be involved before 1 Samuel ends in divination. Well, rebellion is as the sin of divination, and insubordination is as iniquity and idolatry. In other words, you're an idolater, Saul. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. Verse 24, then Saul said to Samuel, yes, I've sinned. I have indeed transgressed the command of the Lord in your words, because I feared the people and listened to their voice. Now, verse 25, notice, now therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me that I may worship the Lord. He asks, okay, I'm sorry, can we get over this? Verse 26, but Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Verse 27, as Samuel turned to go, Saul seized the edge of his robe. Saul tries to grab Samuel, and it tore. And this becomes a picture of the judgment. So Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn, in the same way you tore my robe, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbor who is better than you. That is going to be the sign of the tearing. We're going to see that again later on. So remember that. Verse 29, also the glory of Israel will not lie or change his mind, for he is not a man that he should change his mind. God isn't just having a bad day. You have sinned, and there will be a consequence. Verse 30, then he said, I have sinned, but please honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and go back with me that I may worship the Lord your God. Notice, he said, okay, God's angry at me, and that's all the spiritual stuff, but can we at least put on the show in front of the people? Notice, Saul is still afraid of what the people are going to think. That has been his problem. Verse 31, so Samuel went back following Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. He goes through the motions at least. And yet there's something sadly amiss. Verse 32, then Samuel said, bring me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him cheerfully. Now Agag's been watching this whole thing, and Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past. You know, if I was going to be put to death, it was going to be when I was first captured. But everything looks okay now, so I seem to be all right. Verse 33, but Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag to pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. Agag dies. And it looks like all of his descendants die, but I'm not so sure that was the case. And the reason I say that is because when we get to the book of Esther, we will see the villain of the book of Esther. He will be named Haman, but he will be named Haman the Agagite. Haman, the descendant of Agag, and he will seek to bring destruction upon all Israel. I can't help but wonder, would that have been avoided if Saul had been completely obedient from the outset? And my answer is I don't know. Verse 34, then Samuel went to Ramah, but Saul went up to his house at Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death, for Samuel grieved over Saul. And not only does Samuel grieve, notice the Lord grieved. The Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. And so our story ends with Saul having been rejected by God because of disobedience. But now we will see that a new king will arise. David will be chosen. He will be the new anointed one. He will be the king from Bethlehem. And really, that's the point of the story, that we need the better king from Bethlehem.